As we have already studied, there is a big difference between moral rules and legal rules. The law is made by society, by the authorities, and if you don't respect the legislation, you might be punished. But this poses a very interesting philosophical question. When can we say that the law is legitimate, valid, acceptable? What is the foundation of the law? Now, there are different theories to answer this question. We'll study three of them. The first one is the theory of natural law. According to the natural law theory, there are some basic rights, human rights, that are part of our human nature. They are innate, we're born with them, and we all have them regardless of our differences. So the legislation is legitimate when it respects these natural rights. John Locke, for example, who was an English philosopher who lived in the 17th century, was a supporter of the natural law theory. He thought that everybody, by nature, has the right to life, freedom, and private property. And if the legislation does not respect these rights, it is not a valid and legitimate legislation because it is not respecting our natural rights. Now, not everybody agrees with this theory. An opposing theory is the conventionalist interpretation. Conventionalists think that the law is the result of an agreement. So if we have these legal rules, it's because we have decided to write them on a paper. And we could change them if we find a different agreement. For this theory, human rights are not natural. They are just the result of an agreement, and they could be changed if we decide to do so. A third theory, which is closely linked to conventionalism, is the legal positivism. According to this theory, the only law that exists really is the one that is written on a paper and enforced by the police. So only the law that is made by society and that is put into practice by force is the one that exists. There are no natural laws. The law is only real when it exists on a paper and it is enforced by the police. Now, how much do you know about human rights? As you will probably know, human rights were passed in 1948 when the United Nations proclaimed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In this declaration, there are 30 rights, and if you want to know them all, I invite you to go to the internet and check a wonderful website called Youth for Human Rights, or in Spanish, Juventud por los Derechos Humanos, where you can find different videos explaining all your rights. But beware, not all rights are equal. Human rights can be divided in different groups according to which value they defend. Civil rights defend our freedom. They are things that nobody can do to you. These are things that are forbidden to everybody, including the government. This means that the state, the police, the government cannot do these things to you in order to protect your freedom. For example, they cannot kill you. That's why you have the right to life. Or they cannot send you to prison without a fair trial. They cannot stop you from thinking or saying what you want. They cannot stop you from having your private property or from forming your family. So all of these are civil rights that protect your freedom. A second group is formed by political rights that protect your participation in society and that include the right to vote. A third group is formed by social and economic rights. These rights protect your equality, and these are things that the government, the state, must give you for free in order to grant everybody's equality. For example, they include the right to health protection, the right to education, or the right to social security. This means that unemployed people must be helped with money if they lose their jobs. All these things cost money, and that's why they are called social and economic rights. Finally, there is a fourth group called solidarity, human rights, and they apply to peoples. This means collective groups of people, and they include the right to development, to live in a well-developed and peaceful country. What happens if they don't respect our rights. Who defends them? Well, human rights are defended by law. They are protected by our constitution. So if anybody violates your rights, you can go to the tribunals and they will defend you. Nevertheless, there are also governmental and international institutions that protect your rights. For example, the United Nations or the International Criminal Court that prosecutes serious violations of human rights, for example, war crimes. Nevertheless, there are also non-governmental organizations that also protect human rights, like Amnesty International or Human Rights Watch. As you will probably know, the United Nations are trying to improve the respect of human rights in the world with their 2030 agenda that includes the objectives of sustainable development that are supposed to be met by 2030.